Welcome to the CLB Forge podcast, brought to you by CLB North American Mission. This is the show to help equip you and your church for mission, ministry, and multiplying disciples.
Hello and welcome to episode 55. We're excited to have you here. We're excited to have a guest with us as well. Stacia Systma is here, and she is going to share a little bit about her ministry that she currently is running with youth, and we're excited to have her on. Stacia, if you've listened to our podcast episodes 1 through 50, we asked the question, what is better, Star Wars and Star Trek? But we don't need to ask you that question because we already know where your allegiance is, because literally before we started recording, you said, is there anyone who actually in their right mind believes that Star Trek is even remotely close to as great as Star Wars is? So
I think you're embellishing that a little bit.
Nope. That's not what I do, Ryan. You know the truth behind that. I'm not an embellisher in any way. I do not speak in hyperbole. But now, as we've gotten past episode 50, Stacia, we've started to ask a different question. So we haven't prompted you for this or not, but this question is pretty important. What was your favorite cartoon growing up as a child?
Like Tailspin, or like the one with the 3 ducks and Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah, DuckTales.
DuckTales.
Wow.
Whoa.
Like
this
that,
is great.
That afternoon, like I ran home from school literally so I could watch like that block of shows.
Yeah, Tailspin, Rescue Rangers, and DuckTales.
And then there was Gummy Bears in there for a little bit.
Nice. Yeah, that's great.
Wow.
You're not alone. In fact, our guest for episode 51 also said that her favorite was Tailspin. And that person, coincidentally, was Gretchen Ronovic. So now you guys totally have a connection
Now we're
to
best
talk to each other.
friends.
I mean, could anything be cooler than that, making that connection together?
Yeah, Stacia has been married for almost 18 years to her husband, Matt. They have 4 kids that are 19, 17, 13, and 11. They've lived in Barnesville, Minnesota for the last 15 years. Stacia has a degree in nursing, and she currently serves at Triumph as a junior high coordinator for Triumph East. Is that right?
Yep.
Triumph East, their East Campus in Moorhead, Minnesota. But she's been volunteering in youth ministry for, and I quote her in her words, as long as I can remember, some of it against my will, unquote. Love that. And probably every youth worker listening says, oh, me too. Yeah. Anyway, Stacia, I also know, I've known Stacia for a few years and know people that work with her. And Stacia has a reputation for being an innovator, a go-getter, a lifelong learner, and has a natural rapport with students. So thank you, Stacia, for being on the show with us today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
Total case in point, the t-shirt right there. That is definitely an inroad to students. As a person who deals with youth, man, Bob Ross, he transcends generations. Because like I have kids who are like, I watch Bob Ross all the time on Twitch. He's got a 24-hour channel. And I'm like, you guys are crazy. I remember Bob Ross when like his stuff was airing, and they just love it. Like I have one kid who literally goes to sleep listening and watching Bob Ross paint.
I actually I wrote a 6-week Bible study on Bob Ross episodes.
So good.
Wow. Okay.
That's so good.
So Stacia, for our listeners, can you describe your t-shirt?
So this is a shout out to Bo Sabuma. He got it for me and Eric Smith, if you know him, who are kind of like the 3 amigos, and each one has a different letter on the sleeve.
That's great.
Mine is an S, Eric's is an M, and Bo's is an L for small, medium, and large.
That's some team spirit there. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, for those for our listeners who aren't familiar with Bo, we had Bo on an episode prior to this, and I'm scrolling through, and I'm sure my wife is going to do a tremendous job making me sound smarter to just edit it out so that it just goes right to which one is Bo.
42.
42. Thanks. Yeah,
There you
just
go.
got to it. Episode
Oh,
42, if you want to listen to him and Michael. Never call him Mike. He is Michael Titterness. And we had them on, and they were fun duo to have on. We got absolutely nothing done. It was super productive and great. We had way too many laughs, and my wife was exhausted after editing it, but it was great to have them on. All right, let's jump into a couple questions. So Stacia, can you tell us someone who had a impact on your spiritual growth growing up that's kind of propelled you into ministry?
This one actually, it was a fun question. I really didn't have to think about it all. And to be politically correct, let me say that I had a swarm of people in my life. But this is the one that it was like knee-jerk, no thinking. His name was Bill Gilberts. And he was from Fergus Falls. He's actually originally out from North Carolina, but he took on our youth group at my church in Fergus Falls. I went to Federated Church, Presbyterian, just kidding. But our youth group was in transition, and Bill was in his late 50s, looked like Santa, like genuinely the nicest older man you could ever meet, but came in and felt bad that we didn't have a youth group at the time. And he took over, and he flat out said, like, I'm not capable of this, but you deserve more than this. And he sat with me, and he really dug into the Bible with me. He actually got me a Bible that was easier to read because I was struggling. Later in life, I found out I was dyslexic. So the Bible was like so hard for me to read. And he just walked with us and, took time with us when he didn't feel capable, he didn't feel worthy, and he didn't feel relevant, but he saw the need and he was willing to fill it anyway. And he never, ever made us feel like we weren't worth his time, which was impressive because later I found out that he learned Latin and read the whole Bible in Latin because he wanted to know like the original translation. And he was a very big time reverend back in North Carolina. And I just knew him as Bill. And it was the greatest thing. And I grew up feeling like my spirituality was really important to him.
I love that idea of individuals who don't feel like they are capable or have the ability to lead something, and yet they just kind of step out in faith, trusting that God is going to equip. And we see the Lord doing that all throughout the Bible. And so to be able to just kind of step forward and be like, you know what? I see a need and I'm going to fill that need, even though I don't really feel like I am prepared or even if it's a strong suit of mine. And like you kind of proved there, the one thing that he did that really seemed to speak out to you guys was that he valued spending time with you and he took time to get to know you. And I think that that's one of the most important things about discipleship is really pouring into someone so that they know that they're important.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Stacia, how did you get involved in youth ministry?
Honestly, a better question would probably be, how did I try to run away from youth ministry? Because literally my mom did children's ministry growing up in the church, and I like volunteered all throughout church. I moved away for college, ended up getting pregnant, like felt about this big when I came back to my home church, like didn't feel worthy, kind of felt like I was not good enough to ever be in ministry again. Got thrown back in for a little while because there was a kid in that church that got pregnant as like a 15-year-old. So I ended up mentoring her, got married, came back, moved to Barnesville, went to Hope Church. And I spoke to Rich Iverson about how I wanted kids to feel at home in church. Like it wasn't just a place they want to on Sunday or when there was day camp, but like a place that they felt they could walk in and they owned it, you know, good, bad, or otherwise. So I was like, we should start a thing where we meet like weekdays throughout the summer, like, you know, welcoming them in. And I had this great idea for this thing called Science, Fun, and Scripture. And I was like, you should have somebody do it. And he's like, cool. When are you going to start it? And I was like, no, like not me, somebody else, somebody that's better than I am. And Rich was like, your heart's so big for this, you need to be the one doing it. So apprehensively, I started it. And I just started doing ministry there. I finally got to a point where my kids were getting older, the kids I had at the time. And I was like, oh, I need to get a job. And then I went into nursing and I tried to quit ministry again. And God was like, no, you pulled me in again. And like, I eventually tried to start Young Life in Barnesville. And then one of my leaders ended up passing away. And that was so rough. So then I said, God, let me feel free to let go of this. And if any other opportunity comes my way, I promise I will seek it to my full ability. Then a job opened at Triumph and I felt compelled to apply. And I thought, who on earth in this world is going to hire a 40-year-old mom of 4? Nobody, not for youth ministry. So I felt like I could have a whole conversation and never dreamt I would get hired, but Christian Anderson hired me to be a youth associate here, and here I am.
That's great. That's great. So you went into your interview relaxed, maybe, because I'm not going to wind up with this anyway.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah, when he called me back, I was like, do you seriously have the right number? Yeah. Especially in a place like Triumph where there's so many talented people.
That's a tremendous story, how the Lord has kind of led you. And it's almost like, you know, once it happens, there's no way of kind of pumping the brakes. You're just on, you're on the road, and you just got to keep going. And so as you've been traversing your ministry over the past years since you've been in it, what have been some of the biggest lessons that you've taken away that perhaps we can glean from and learn from?
That you need to invest in other people. That, of course, is the biggest one. My ultimate goal in my ministry is to run myself out of a job one day. I hope. But hopefully the ministry gets so big they still need me. But I want to equip my leaders well. I tried to give them the tools they need. I tried to give them the attention that they need to feel secure in pouring into other kids. And I try to pour as much as I can into them so that they can pour into our kiddos. And the biggest lesson I've learned is that it's okay for you to be wrong. It's okay for you to make mistakes. I put a ton of pressure on myself to come in, you know, with like this super gusto of being this amazing human that nobody could live without. And that just was not a realistic expectation. And I failed a lot along the way. And that was okay, because it's also a perfect example of how God redeems. Yeah. So I would say those are the biggest things. And to let other people help you.
That's good. Stacia, can you tell us a little bit more about what you've learned about delegating? Because I think this is one of our biggest challenges and callings as ministry leaders, that our biggest impact comes through not what we ourselves do, but those whom we empower and equip. And you've got a team of leaders in your ministry that you're called to empower and equip them. How do you do that and stay organized? I think it'd be so good to hear from you on that, because so many of us, we get validation from what we do, and we focus on what we can do, and we forget to invest in and lead and delegate to the gifted people around us. So tell us, what are you learning about how to do that well?
Disclaimer that I am learning. I just really see the importance of getting to know who your leaders are and what their talents and their gifts are. This year, I was super blessed. Like I was super blessed to have the leaders I had. they were beyond talented, but some of them were really great teachers, and I tried to pour into them. During a pandemic, when you are trying to record online as well, it was a little more difficult. But some of them were just really good at relational, and sending them out to connect with those students and giving them the go ahead to contact them and, introducing parents to them so that they felt like they had the freedom to do that. And niching out time to do that, because I think a lot of times the hardest part is the beginning, when you're kind of teaching your volunteers, and getting them off their feet seems to take up more time than doing it yourself.
Yeah.
But that's a necessary time spent.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, most definitely. That's stuff that we've learned too. I mean, we can talk about this now. It's going to be news to you, Stacia, but episode 50 is actually releasing next week. And one of the things that is happening in episode 50 is that we're bringing in new hosts to begin also doing what Ryan and I do. And I've definitely noticed that in the beginning, like you talk about in the beginning, there's a lot of stuff that needs to get kind of ironed out, and it seems a little overwhelming. But then as you get to know the individuals that you're bringing on staff with you or on board with you, you kind of have those first 2 weeks kind of feeling stuff out, and then it falls into place as you get to know them better and as you delegate stuff out. And so that's been at least for me, I know Ryan probably does this flawlessly because that's who he is as a person, which is one of the reasons why he's great on this podcast, is just kind of keeping everything organized and in one spot. And as a fellow homie in ADD, and I actually had ADHD, so I'm totally on board with you on a lot of that stuff. It's easy to just kind of get involved in what's immediately in front of you and not plan for the future, because I kind of struggle to do that. And I know that just through having this podcast with Ryan, he's poured into me so that I could have much more deliberate time and organization. And I feel like that's been something that now I'm pouring into our people as they're starting to transition into also becoming hosts too. So it's kind of cool how that works. So I really echo what you are talking about with that. So you kind of talked about how you delegate leadership out and stay organized in terms of that. But what about developing new leaders? How are you doing that? Are you using a tool? Are you finding certain things are working better for you that you can model perhaps for us and our listeners?
So Sawyer Brunkow is our senior high coordinator. And one cool thing that we've been doing is like a student leadership team, where you kind of pick out those kids that really want to grow. You can have those seeds and plug them into spaces where they can grow. The hardest part sometimes is convincing people that they can be leaders. And that's the biggest chore I have a lot of times, is like meeting them where they're at, but like stretching them. For instance, oh, he's going to kill me. He won't listen to this. My son is...
Your son's not going to listen to the
podcast.
I mean, you should at least give him a shout out here in case he does.
Well, Casey, I love you. Please don't kill me. But my son swears up and down all the time that he is not good with kids, that he is not a leader, that he like wouldn't be good at any of that stuff. However, he is super amazing at it. And it takes little things like, hey, this kid is here. He's sitting by himself. Can you go connect with him? Or like, we just had the 8th graders come and try out youth group a couple of weeks ago, taking those kids and just being like, hey, I want you to latch onto one. So a lot of it is giving people those baby steps to get the confidence, and also making it okay when they screw up and mess up. Giving them that space and that grace to like be like, oh, I really messed up. How can I do it better next time? I'm a huge relational person. So that's kind of how I try to pour into them, and how I develop them is like meeting them and drawing them out a little bit, finding those things and like pulling them a little bit further than they want to go, and being like, no, look at what you just did. You just did that, you know, having them teach a lesson, but like letting them go through it and practice it with me. Talking about what area of the Bible has been most significant in their life, and how that part of the Bible relates to their life, and how that can relate to the kids' life that they're working in, you know, giving them that tools, especially teaching people that their story matters. No matter what it is, their story is what's going to be the biggest thing that is left with these students, and their story and how they've developed in their faith. So
it's also going to be one of the things that draws them back too. You know, their story is stuff that they're going to remember. And as if there's the chance where someone else shares their story, perhaps that could reignite what they went through in youth group, as you're making those lasting impressions on them. So that's tremendous that you guys are taking time to do that. And also it sounds like you're molding youth group kids too, to minister to younger kids. Like kids who are in youth group are now ministering to those who are younger and making connections, which has a huge impact on younger kids. You know, having an older kid that you can connect with, that you maybe perhaps you look up to, all of a sudden paying attention to you or pouring into you, that changes perspective, and it's tremendous. So thank you for doing that.
Stacia, I just want to go back to when you were talking about that. It sounds like when you've got a leader that's they're maybe speaking for the first time or teaching or leading something, it sounds like you pull them aside after it's happened and talk through it with them and help them reflect on what went well, what they could work on. Did I get that right?
I try. Because I mean, I know I hate public speaking. This is actually making me exceptionally nervous being here. So
we're intimidating. I understand that.
This is the worst. I just like, and I don't want that for anybody else. So I tried to tell them things that they could do differently. It's really not super helpful when somebody is just like, oh yeah, great job, and then like never ask you to speak again, and you're like, what? So yeah. I try to give them the tools to improve and continuously improving, but also give them, you know, credit and praise where praise is due.
I think something else too that will be great once this podcast airs is for you to go back and listen to it and realize that even if you're really super nervous right now, as you say you are, it doesn't show at all. You sound cool as a cucumber, which is good.
I never rewatch things.
Well,
so
this might be a first.
For confirmation, part of the deal is that every student has to get up and speak in front of the church during overhearing, right?
Yep.
And a lot of kids are like, I can't do that, I'm too nervous. And I'm like, well, I tell you what, you have to speak during overhearing in front of the people, your friends and family, you know. The next Sunday, I have to get up in front of 500 people and talk about how great you are. So if I'm willing to do that, you have to do it too. Don't make them do anything I wouldn't be willing to do. So that's part of the deal. So everybody, it was recorded, and everyone's like, oh yeah, you did such a great job. And I still have never watched it.
That's good.
So thanks. I'm glad I sound good, better than I feel.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, thanks, Stacia. It's been great having you as a guest. Thanks for being with us today. Listeners, thank you so much for listening to our show. You can find Stacia's church at triumphlbc.org. Don't forget to subscribe to our show, and we'd love it if you share the podcast with a friend or colleague. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
This has been an episode of the CLB Forge podcast, brought to you by CLB North American Mission. Thanks for listening. We welcome your questions and comments. Email us at podcast@clbforge.org.